So here it is, all pinned, ready to go. Now you need to do some sort of stitching on this in order to keep the 3 layers together, and I'm going to do some machine stitching on this one. If you use a machine to quilt, it's really best to use this gadget, which is called a walking foot, and this evenly feeds all the layers through the machine as you work. So some of the top layer is moved along by this action, and the bottom layer is moved along by the action on the sewing machine. So we'll pop that on. A bit awkward. There we are. I've got red thread on the top and navy thread on the bottom to match the quilt, and I'm going to lengthen the stitch on the sewing machine slightly, because using the walking foot always tends to make the stitches smaller. So starting somewhere from the middle, I'm going to do something that's called stitching in the ditch, which means I'm going to attempt to stitch between the blocks, anchor all 3 layers together, like this. When I come to the end of this row, I'm going to stop with the needle down and swivel the whole quilt, go back the other way. So I've stitched in the ditch all over this quilt, in between the blocks, and now on these outside triangles that are plain, I'm just stitching 1/4 inch away from the block, using the marks on the walking foot as a guide. So there's the mark, I'm running down the edge of the block, and there's a little mark there that's also 1/4 inch away, so when I come to that, I stop and swivel. So I'm running that small mark down the seam, nice straight outline stitch, stopping with the needle down, moving over to the next block, off again. On the border of this quilt, I'm going to quilt some parallel lines, and I'm going to do the first one 3/4 inch away from that small inner border, and then the second one 3/4 inch away from the first one. So I'm going to set up a quilting guide to help me do that. And here it is. That goes into the walking foot, and I set that at 3/4 inch away from the needle. I'm going to set that guide to run down that seam here like that, so that when I stitch I should be exactly 3/4 inch away from that small inner border, like that. And then to complete that, I'll do a second one 3/4 inch away from the first. Now this time I'm running the guide down that first set of stitching I did, always stopping with the needle down. I'll go around and complete the whole border like that. Of course, you don't need to use a sewing machine if you don't want to. There are several simple ways you can quilt the 3 layers together by hand. Traditionally, hand quilting is done with a slightly thicker thread like this one, and with very small stitches. But you can use a thicker thread. This is a cotton pearly. I've got a knot in the end. Pin the knot in. And take quite big stitches like that and make a feature of it. You could do that with an interesting colour cotton pearly, or you can do it with 2 or 3 strands of embroidery thread. The other option is to tie a quilt, which is an old traditional method. I'll show you how to do that. So I've got 2 strands of cotton pearly in my needle. You could also use something like a crocheted cotton or a fine knitting yarn. So we go down, leave a tail, back up, pull it tight, back stitch into the same place, back up, cut it, and then tie those tails with a weaver's knot or a reef knot, left over right, right over left. Tie it quite tight, and then you can trim that down if you want to. You might also possibly use some interesting buttons, perhaps on the intersection of the blocks, such as there, there. And those you would just stitch on the usual way that you would stitch buttons, with a double thread, a knot in the end, and stitch them on. I hope I've given you plenty of ideas for how to finish off your quilt, and all you need to do is go do it.